we'll be going over IRS Form 8832, Entity Classification Election. This document contains 8 pages. However, the first page is an update for where to send this tax form when you've completed it. You can use this as guidance to determine which IRS office you should send a completed form to. Some taxpayers will send it to the Kansas City office. Some taxpayers will send the completed form to the Ogden, Utah office. So after you've completed the form, please be sure to check that guidance to better understand where you should send your Form 8832 when completed. So we'll quickly go through the tax form. We'll cover some administrative items, and then we'll go through it line by line. So part 1 is the election information, the type of election. And then part 2 is late election relief, which might not apply to all taxpayers. And then at the bottom is the signature field for applicable taxpayers. Starting with page 5 of the document, there are 4 pages of instructions to help guide you through this form. Let's go to the top. So the purpose of 8832 is for an eligible entity to elect how it will be classified for tax purposes, whether it's a corporation, as a partnership, or as an entity that's disregarded as separate from its owner. An eligible entity is classified for tax purposes under the default rules described in the form instructions unless it files either Form 8832 or Form 2553, election by a small business corporation. There are rules and guidance on who must file contained in the form instructions. Any of these following entities must file. 1. A domestic entity electing to be classified as a corporation. 2. A domestic entity electing to change its current classification even if it's currently classified under the default rule. 3. A foreign entity with more than one owner, all owners having limited liability, electing to be classified as a partnership. 4. A foreign entity that has at least one owner without limited liability, electing to be classified as a corporation. 5. A foreign entity with a single owner having limited liability, electing to be disregarded as separate from its owner. 6. A foreign entity electing to change its current classification. Do not file this for an eligible entity that is either tax exempt, treated as a real estate investment trust or a REIT, or electing to be classified as an S corporation. An eligible entity that timely files Form 2553 to elect classification as an S corporation and who meets all other requirements is deemed to have made their election and does not need to file this tax form. So let's go through the tax form step by step. On line 1, you will check line 1A if you are choosing a classification for the first time. For example, you do not want to be classified under the default rules. Do not file this form if you are accepting to be classified under default rules. And then you would check line 1B if you are changing your current classification. If you check 1A, skip lines 2A and 2B and go directly to line 3. Otherwise, go to line 2A. Under line 2A, has the eligible entity previously filed an entity election within the last 60 months? If yes, go to line 2B. If no, skip line 2B and go to line 3. Under line 2B, was the eligible entity's prior election an initial classification election by a newly formed entity that was effective on the date of formation? If yes, go to line 3, and if not, then stop here. You're generally not eligible to make the election. And there are instructions in the instructions, there is additional guidance about the 60-month limitation rule. In line 3, you will answer whether or not the eligible entity has more than one owner. If yes, you can elect to be classified as a partnership or as a corporation. And you can skip line 4 and go directly to line 5. If there is only one owner, then you can elect to be classified as a corporation or to be disregarded as a separate entity. In that case, go to line 4. Line 4, if there is only one owner, you will provide the name of the owner and the identifying number of that owner. For line 5, if the eligible entity is owned by one or more affiliated corporations that file a consolidated return, provide the name and employer identification number of the parent corporation. For line 6, you will check the appropriate box if you are changing a classification or electing out of the default classification. Then you may choose from 6 different entities. A domestic eligible entity electing to be classified as an association taxable as a corporation. B, a domestic eligible entity electing to be classified as a partnership. C, a domestic eligible entity with a single owner electing to be disregarded as a separate entity. For example, a single person LLC. D, a foreign eligible entity electing to be classified as an association taxable as a corporation. E, a foreign eligible entity electing to be classified as a partnership. Or F, a foreign eligible entity with a single owner electing to be disregarded as a separate entity. For line 7, if the eligible entity is created or organized in a foreign jurisdiction, provide the name of the foreign country of this organization. In line 8, you will enter the date of effective election, month, day, and year. In the instructions, it states that generally the election will take effect on the date that you enter on this form, or on the date filed if no date is entered on line 8. An election cannot take effect more than 75 days prior to the date that the election is filed, nor can it take effect more than 12 months after the filing date. So if line 8 shows a date that is more than 75 days prior to the filing date, the election will default to 75 days before the filing date. If line 8 shows an effective date more than 12 months from the filing date, the election will take place 12 months after the date that the election is filed. In line 9, you'll enter the name and the contact person that the IRS may call for more information. In line 10, you'll enter that person's telephone number. Below this are signature fields for all persons that must sign this document, and that must be signed by each member of the electing entity who is an owner at the time that the election is filed, or any officer, manager, or member of the electing entity who is authorized to make the election. The elector represents having such authorization under penalties of perjury. For Part 2, late election relief. You only need to complete Part 2 if the entity is requesting late election relief under Revenue Procedure 2009-41. An eligible entity may be eligible for late election relief under this revenue procedure if each of the following requirements is met. 1. The entity failed to obtain its requested classification as of the date of formation or failed to obtain its requested change solely because this form was not filed in a timely manner. 2. Either A, the entity has not filed a federal tax or information return for the first year in which the election was intended because the due date has not passed for that tax return, or B, the entity has timely filed all required tax returns and information returns within 6 months after its due date, consistent with its requested classification for all the years the entity intended the requested election to be effective, and that there are no inconsistent tax or information returns that have been filed. 3. The entity has reasonable cause for its failure to make the timely election classification. And 4. 3 years and 75 days from the requested effective date of the eligible entity's election have not passed. If that is the case, then you will provide an explanation as to why this election was not filed on time. And then you'll sign, date, and put the title under penalties of perjury that you have examined the election to include any accompanying documents, and that these facts are true, correct, and complete to the best of your knowledge. If you need additional detail, you can refer to the written instructions on the back of this form. For ease of use, we've also written a step-by-step article which you can find on our website. Simply go to teachmepersonalfinance.com, type in IRS Form 8832. You should see our article on this tax form. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. And if you have any questions, as always, please post them in the comments section. Thank you very much.